We're about to cook a chuck roast in foil, even though years ago people did not use chuck roast. They used roast from the round. The round is a large area, it doesn't have a lot of bones, so it's easy to separate into roasts. Top round, the bottom round, and the eye round. Not a lot of fat, not a lot of flavor, and fairly tough meat. It's an expensive, $3 or $4 a pound, that's why it was used. We're gonna spend a little more money and get a much better cut. So we're going to the chuck. That's the forequarter of the animal, the first 5 ribs. And there are a couple of roasts you might consider. A top blade roast, which means it's above the shoulder blade, and then a chuck eye roast, which was in the center of the ribs. This one is particularly good. It has a lot of flavor and has a little bit more fat. We actually have the roast here. Thank you for procuring a roast today.
I'm not a roast.
You're not a roast. The top roast, or the bottom roast. Top round, bottom round, and eye round. These are the 3 from the round most often used. We're not using those because, as I said, you can see there's not a lot of fat in here. It's a fairly tough cut of meat. This is a top blade roast from the chuck. You can see it has a lot more fat, and it's actually a pretty good choice.
Yep.
But if you want the top choice, and it's not that expensive, is a chuck eye roast. You can see there's a lot of marbling here. It has a lot of flavor, and if you're going to cook something for 4 or 5 hours, you might as well pick a good roast.
That's exactly right.
So chuck eye is the winner.
This is a beautiful roast, has tons of connective tissue, a lot of intramuscular fat. That's all going to melt and make this really tough cut super tender. So let me introduce you here to a secret ingredient. This was one of the ingredients that was originally used in this recipe, and this is onion soup mix. It's dehydrated. See all those dehydrated onion flakes? There's a lot of different ingredients in here. Now, it does add tons of flavor. It also adds a lot of color to the roast as it's cooking. And that's one of the magic tricks about this particular recipe. You wrap it up in foil, it never really gets browned or seared right on the stovetop. Put it into the oven and unwrap it, and it's beautifully brown. It's kind of like a little magic trick. So the problem with using this is it's really, really salty, and all the flavors are kind of out of our control. So we thought we would make our own soup mix. Very easy to do. This is 4 teaspoons of onion powder, and this is 2 teaspoons of just regular table salt here, 2 teaspoons of light brown sugar, a teaspoon of black pepper, and a teaspoon of garlic powder, and it goes, a teaspoon of dry thyme, and a half a teaspoon of celery seed. Now, this mix is not completely done. There are a couple of things that we need to add to it in order to mimic the effects of that soup mix. One was the browning that I talked to you about. So this is 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Cornstarch will actually brown even at low temperatures. You don't need to sear it. And then the other thing was there was a really, really kind of deep flavor that came from that soup mix. What this is a teaspoon of espresso powder. It's not going to taste like coffee, I promise. It's just going to add a really nice, rich flavor. Just going to mix all this together. Now, I'm just going to put this off to the side, and we can work on that roast. This roast, as is huge. It's about 4.5 pounds. If we were to put this in, say, a 300-degree oven, which we found was great and perfect for really breaking down that collagen, it took nearly 6 hours of cooking time. So let me show you what we're going to do. Now, you see this center line of fat here. That's never going to melt out, no matter how long we actually cook this. So the easiest way to get that out of there is to simply split these apart. You can just start with your hands. And if it's not really letting you take it apart.
I've seen you rip into food with your bare hands before, but
Usually
never
it's
a 4-pound roast.
So sometimes there's this really strong band of connective tissue that you just need to break through. And you can see that it's really 2 separate muscles of meat there.
The chuck has a lot more connective tissue or collagen than the round.
That's right.
And that's why you have to cook it a long time, because it has to get really hot to dissolve into gelatin, otherwise it's chewy.
That's right. And a good rule of thumb, too, is the softer fat will melt, the really hard fat will not melt. So we're going to go in there and trim away any of that hard fat and really just leave about a 1/4 inch of fat on these roasts. Now, since they're smaller, we're actually going to tie them up separately. They're going to cook faster, but also it's going to make carving these and serving them a lot easier. Anytime a recipe calls for already cut up meat, it really does make a lot of sense to do it yourself. You're going to save some serious money. Plus, you're also going to be able to see exactly what that cut is. So there we go, and I'm going to go ahead and tie this one up, and I've got some string. I'm just going to start right in the center here, and just make a quick double knot. If you loop twice and you pull it tight, that string has a much better chance of staying there nice and tight, so you can make a double knot. How's that?
Perfect.
We've got our 2 little beef bundles. Even though we're roasting it in foil, we've got to have a pan underneath. Otherwise, we might have a really messy oven later on. So let me show you how we set up our pan. 2 really big pieces of foil. So I'm just going to crisscross these 2 sheets here.
So this is heavy-duty foil?
Heavy-duty foil. Now, some recipes that are out there actually would include vegetables in the mix, and we thought, well, why not do it too? That way you could have roast, you could have potatoes, you could have onions, carrots, all these other things. Some of these ingredients are actually going to flavor the jus. Others are going to be served on the side of the beef. This is 2 onions, and we've gone ahead and peeled these and quartered them. Now, I've got 6 small new potatoes. Got a few carrots here. This is 4 carrots. And these are cut into pretty big pieces. Believe it or not, even after hours and hours and hours in the oven, the potatoes and the carrots are not going to be overcooked. And that's because we kept them on the larger side. A couple of bay leaves. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, which has tons of glutamates in it. It's going to help make that jus really flavorful. Now, back to the beef roast. I do want to pat them dry. You don't want it to be too moist inside that packet. We just want it to be really flavored with the beef itself. We're just going to put these right on top of these vegetables. Just nestle them right on top. And now we can apply that rub. All the different spices, the cornstarch, just rub it on there. Now, obviously, it's not just going to season the beef. It's also going to help with the jus as well.
You know, some recipes you need to have faith.
Is this one of them?
This is a wee bit odd.
I grew up with this dish. Absolutely, and I have to say that it was like magic, and the whole house smelled so good. Roasts are rubbed. Now we got to seal it up, and we really want to make sure that we seal this up tight. It's imperative that all that moisture really is sealed inside. So I'm just going to gather these up right at the corner, and we'll just work the way out to the ends. Now this first one might be a little bit tricky just because there were all those vegetables in it. That's the second sheet of foil that's going to make all the difference. Let's get all that sealed up in there. So we're going to put this in a nice low oven. Low and slow is the way to melt all that collagen and fat. 300 degrees is the perfect oven temperature. We're going to leave these 2 little roasts in there until they're really, really tender, and that's going to take about 4 to 4.5 hours. All right, Chris, I'm going to get that pot roast out of the oven. Looks just like when it went in. I told you it was a magic trick. We're going to carefully open up the foil. A lot of steam in here. Look at
there's steam. Ooh.
that. Oh, and you can see there's just tons of moisture in there. That is just beef flavor. We didn't add any liquid to this. And this beef is so tender, it's just falling apart. But it is not ready. It's going to make it a lot easier on us if we just let it rest for about 20 minutes. I'll tint it with foil to keep it nice and warm. I'm going to go in there and grab those onions. Just squeeze out all that juice. I'm going to switch over, grab all those carrots and potatoes, the vegetables. Now, one last thing to do, and that's to capture all that beautiful juice. So I'm going to put you in charge of holding that. Just going to take this packet and pour these juices right in through that mesh strainer. We want to capture all those little bits there. Let me just strain that through here. So that chuck roast, even though we cut away a lot of that fat, it still gave a lot into the juice. So that's why it's a good idea to put this right into a fat separator. All right, so that's all we can do for right now. We're going to let that roast rest for about 20 minutes. And in the meantime, the fat can separate. I'm going to put a piece of foil on these vegetables to keep them warm as well.
Okay.
All right, so it's been about 20 minutes and the fat has separated here. So I'm just going to pour this off nice and slow into our gravy boat. All right, let's take a look. Et voila! They're gorgeous and they are ready to be cut into. So the first thing I want to do is just chop away at this string. You don't need extra fiber in your diet. These are almost falling apart as I'm holding on to them. And just cut right into the meat. And look, I could use a butter knife to do this, basically. Oh my gosh. I'm just going to pour a little bit of this jus right over the top. About a half cup to serve. Then you can serve the rest at the table.
That looks fabulous.
I mean, look at that. Nice slice right in here. 1 or 2 slices?
2, please.
All right, of course. And some of the vegetables for you. And of course.
It looks delicious.
Tell me what you think.
A+. Yeah, this is really excellent.
It's the jus that is so concentrated because, again, there's no liquid, just whatever came out of the beef.
Chuck roast in foil, the secret was instead of using onion soup mix, we made our own dry powder mix, and the secret there was using cornstarch, which added a lot of browning. We took a Chnck R0ast, not a roast from the round, we split it in half, got rid of some of the extra fat, and then we used carrots, potatoes, and onions for flavor into a 300-degree oven, covered in foil, of course, for 4 to 5 hours. Bring it out, finish up the sauce, defat it, and there you have it. From Cook's Country, Chuck roast in foil, one of the greatest recipes and the easiest, and no cleanup.
That's right.
I have no work.
Well, you got to clean up my plate here.
That's no problem.